I had a great question that came in today, and I thought maybe it could help a lot of other people too, so I thought I'd answer it here on my YouTube channel. And so this question comes in from Nathan Sanchez. Hey, just curious, when you start a line drawing, do you plot out every meticulous line by connecting and transferring all the perspective points in 3D space and then just freehand over the top? And if so, is there a way to shortcut this process? Because apparently when Nathan does it, he says he's spending just too much time. It takes forever to get any paintings done. Well, I got some really great news about this if you're ready for it. Not everybody's gonna be ready to skip all the underdrawing. All right, let's dig into it. When you're driving a car, if you're learning to drive a stick, which a lot of people don't need to these days, but the thing is like, you, at the beginning, you have to be very conscious of what gear you're in and whether you're putting too much pressure on the clutch and whether or not you need to shift down. And just like, I suppose, riding a multi-speed bicycle, you have to be very conscious of every move that you're making. But as time goes on, you start to get just comfortable with it, and you don't have to like second guess, you know, what gear you're in, and you don't have to second guess what's going on, but you can always feel it if something is wrong. And when you've been doing this for like 30 years, you really do get a sense of just like automatic. You don't have to think about all the perspectives and things like that. They come to you sort of subconsciously, and also you definitely notice when something is off, and you know to go back to those fundamentals of drawing in your perspective grid if it is off. Now, if you're doing a particularly complex drawing, like for instance, if you're not used to working with, you know, certain angles like a fisheye lens, or you're doing something where you're looking down a hill and you need to maybe move the horizon up a lot, then in that case, you're probably going to have to draw out those guides. I mean, that's not a common perspective. It's not something that like you're using all the time. So yeah, you're going to have to draw out those grids and those guides. But as it becomes just sort of like a routine, you don't have to think about it so much. You don't have to like constantly think about the beginner stuff, the fundamental stuff. But when you get stuck, then you might end up where things look wrong and you might not even identify why they look wrong. So it is important to, especially if you're planning out your drawings, to plan out as much as you can. I'm a big proponent of such a process. In fact, if you watch a lot of my tutorial videos and my workshops and things, you'll notice I talk about laying down your foundation a lot, because you have to be very conscious of these things. The more you plan out in the beginning, the less problems you have later in your painting, and then the less frustrated you get with it. So it's very important to be patient and not jump ahead into the detail stuff if you're not ready. So if it's not automatic for you, then don't worry about it. So if this is taking you a long time to lay down all those guides and grids and, you know, for perspective or anatomy and underdrawing and drawing through so that your character looks like they're placed in the environment properly, if it takes you a long time, that's okay. It just means you're not yet ready to shortcut that. And if you're not ready yet to shortcut that, that ain't no sweat, man. It's not like you have to jam this out super fast. It just means that, yes, you have to be very conscious of what you're doing. When you're learning any kind of a skill, there's an actual process to this, where the beginning stages are a meticulous assessment of what the rules of the game are and what the fundamentals and foundational things are. So yeah, that is like overconscious awareness, right? But as time goes on and as you develop mastery of it, like I don't really have to think about the details of color theory as much as I used to, because now I only really have to pay an immediate attention to temperature, for example. Is this a warm background? Well, then I probably want the foreground to be a cool colors. If this is a cool color background, then I maybe want my foreground or the element that I want to stand out to be the opposite temperature. But here's the thing also, if you get too ahead of yourself, or you got like, you know, too many things going on at once, you could forget those fundamentals. And sometimes by skipping over them or not thinking about them and assuming that you know them already, you can kind of end up getting over cocky and end up doing something that is broken. You won't even know why, you know. And so it's important every now and then to go back and revisit your fundamentals. It's important every now and then to go back and do those paintings where you're really spending all that meticulous time drawing in the guides and things. It's something that I found that the more I pay attention to in the early stages, the less I have to pay attention to it later in the painting. But then it becomes about really being conscious of the colors you're choosing and the level of detail that you're using, and of course your stylistic preferences. So I suppose the answer to your question is only if you need to. Like, if you still need to, yeah, absolutely draw in those guides. And if you're not doing it and you're wondering what's wrong with my paintings, go back to those fundamentals. A lot of times people just skip over even having to concern themselves with perspective, and they just look at like, well, I'll just paint over geometry. And that's cool, that's fine if it saves you a lot of time. If you model something out like a landscape or a perspective object or a building in perspective, and then you trace over that, that's fine if that saves you a lot of time and you're very pleased with the final results. But a lot of times what people will do is they'll take the shortcut and then they'll not understand why the shortcut works. And then they're reliant on the trick. They're reliant on the sort of like the magic bullets, but they don't understand how the magic bullets work. And then ultimately, when it comes time to do something really challenging, they don't understand how to deconstruct it, to break it apart. So it's important to spend that time actually learning those fundamentals and not just the flashy stuff. And I say this with the utmost humility, by the way, because there were many times when in my past when I did this too. I felt like, oh, I'm an established artist. I'm working at one of the biggest game studios in the world. I'm supposed to already know this stuff, but I don't have time to stop and do the studies. And that ultimately ended up, putting me in a situation where I wasn't doing the best work that I could have been doing, and it showed. And ultimately, my confidence would fall apart in those times of sort of like desperately needing a win. So if you're looking at a painting that you're doing right now and you're wondering, well, what's wrong with it? Go back to the fundamentals. The answer is in the fundamentals every time. Basic 2-3 point perspective, basic understanding of how to turn forms, lighting and shadow, basic understanding of anatomy and drawing through objects and imagining them in 3D space. Like, get that down. And the more you get that down, the less broken your paintings and your drawings will feel. And painting and drawing, they go hand in hand. So like even doing those like easy art lessons where you're just practicing drawing shapes in different angles and perspectives and then lighting them, like that's going to help you with, yes, drawing like entire cities and buildings and designing structures and vehicles and characters, all of that. It all ties together. So don't skip those rules. Don't skip the understanding of how it all works, because that will ultimately end up hurting your paintings in the future. So I hope that helps you to, one, feel more comfortable about just, take the time to draw in those guides and grids, and know that maybe there is a moment in your mind where you could kind of go, well, I already know that's the vanishing point. I'm just going to do a simple 2-point perspective on this. It's funny because people get carried away and they go, oh, I want to do like a 5-point perspective. Oh, I want to do fisheye. I want to do something really exciting and interesting. But it's like, you could just focus on doing simple 2-point perspective and make an impressive design. That's substantial enough. That's suitable enough. Nobody's going to be impressed with a beginner doing, fisheye lens stuff. Don't worry about it. It's too complicated. Just focus on just getting that 2-3 point perspective down. You can do a lot with just that. And check out some of my artist workouts here on YouTube just to get that down and find things that you can practice to really test yourself. So I hope that helps you. And of course, if you have any questions about doing art or concept art or career in art, please drop those in the comments below. I am doing a lot more videos these days, so do remember to leave questions if you have any, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right, ciao.